All right. Happy Wednesday, everyone.
Hello, happy Wednesday.
Well, we have some stuff to cover. So let's get started with the tech update. Rao, are you here?
Yes, I am. Let me share my screen. I think you should be able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So we have the public beta release, the 0918 running on the testnet right now. And there is one particular issue that was bugging us, which is the insufficient flow causing the node to stop, and then all the resultant issues. So that is being currently investigated, and we see that there are changes in the RSpace state rolling back. That's an issue in some places, and the replay is not giving the same results. So there is basically where the error occurs versus where all it bubbles up. Seems to be complicated and convoluted. So Marcin has been spending time to look into that for the last week, and he's still having issues with the complexity of how this behavior is showing up. So what we realized is that the reason we're having to spend so much time is that we do not have an appropriate way to quickly take an assessment of where did the changes to the state occur, at what points, so that we can quickly get down to the part where the problem is actually occurring. So we have decided that we need to spend some time to create a tool and instrumentation that will help us look into the state at different points, and so that we can quickly resolve any debugging issues. And of course, that is going to help us also tremendously when we are in production, because without proper tooling, we would not be able to quickly come to a conclusion on where the problem is and move the debugging and fixing process quickly.
But just to be clear, that decision, we haven't spec'd the work or done anything, and it won't happen until after Mercury. So it will be a part of the Mercury backlog, but it's not happening before the mainnet release.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, Greg. So other than that, we are continuing to basically track down this bug and put the fixes necessary for that. Then in mergeability, I spoke to the some amount of work in the RSpace side that we are going to do. That will be the PR will be made available in a few days, and then once the review and commits happen on that, that would be in. But the other area which we talked about last time was the proof of stake contract. Currently, the way it is written, it was not written with mergeability in mind in any significant manner. So we are trying to decouple different parts of that. One of the design choices that came up was a hierarchical wallet solution. And this was something that was discussed back in January, apparently. But we see that now implementing that will help reduce the mergeability issue. But also, this is sort of a market requirement for future. So we're going to do some design around this and try to implement that and see what that solution looks like for improving mergeability. So that's those are the two main things. And in Casper and block storage, we have a couple of improvements. In Casper, we're limiting the maximum parent depth. It's set in as a parameter right now. We're going to play with different parent depths to see what it does in terms of reducing the problems. It should help mergeability also when we do that. And then persisting the deploys in LMDB is a ticket. Both of these are in review right now, should be available in the next release when we get to it. So that's in Casper and block storage. In the dApp developer tools, we have Tomislav two changes. One is the support for Ethereum personal signature format, and the other one is a web API, which is an HTTP endpoint for the block API. So those two are in review and should be included in the next release also. That's where we are. There's one other performance improvement. There's one performance improvement one. There was one we counted last time, that was Marcin's change, but this one by Joe to remove bounds on parallelism and parse. That's being reviewed. I think there's one test failing on that. So Joe is going to take a look at it, and we'll have it once it's ready. Well, that should be going into the next release. So there are issues that we're looking at, but there's nothing immediate to report on the performance ones, because we're trying to get the bugs resolved first before we spend too much time on performance. So that's kind of how we're prioritizing what we're doing, so that the network actually can operate and is available for people to test. So that's, I guess, my summary on the tech update. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a question. It's Steve here.
Hey, Steve.
Hi. So from the point that the public beta went live to where we are today, are there any defects that have been lodged against that release that require the clock to be reset?
That's a great question. You know, my gut instinct is no, because we know that, like, the current thing that they're tracking is just making sure that we have coverage with respect to exception handling. So right now the out of flow error is getting all the way up to the very top level exception handler, and it should be caught much earlier. So that's not a change that's structural or substantive in terms of design or anything like that. It's about making sure that the missing exception handler is put in the right place. I wouldn't reset the clock on the basis of that. But I'm absolutely happy if the community feels, if the wider community, the dev or business communities feel that that's worthy of resetting the clock, I would do so. Okay, so the follow-up to that then would be, so with that particular issue in mind, if we decided that we are at that day, 29 days and counting, and we get to the 30 days, and this specific issue, okay, the flow issue, right, is not dealt with, is there a workaround? Yeah, there are workarounds, but I mean, right now it's not. It will be caught. I mean, actually, Marcin. Rao was very conservative in his description. Marcin was actually a little bit more confident about his ability to track this down as he spoke this morning. So I'm not actually worried that it's going to take 30 days. Not even by, no, not at all.
Okay, so in terms of the text that's kind of been shared around a little bit amongst board members, governance committee members at least, although it's completely open to anyone on this call, that talks about the importance of the public beta and why that's so important and why it's such an important milestone. It seems to me that there's there are certain defects that we find, like the flow defect, that if we can, although we find them within a 30-day period, if we can fix them within the same 30-day period and demonstrate it's truly fixed, it doesn't stop the clock.
Yes, that's exactly right. I think that's a very reasonable way to proceed, and I think that honestly most teams proceed that way. So that's the way I would go. Now with respect to the hierarchical wallet, I'd want a little more time from the point at which that is implemented. It doesn't have to be wall clock time, right? So for example, we could put the hierarchical wallet under considerable stress by lots of parallel tests, which would equal lots of time, just not wall clock time. And so that would be one where I'd want to sit down and really give it, a decent discussion and deliberation as to whether or not that that requires resetting the clock.
Right.
Yeah.
Greg, just on that thread, has any of your team's pen testing of the R node found any major critical vulnerabilities so far?
I think they're way too busy just making sure that the features that are promised are bug free.
I guess my question is, do you see a need for any type of third-party testing? I mean, Rao and I talked to CoinFabric this week, and even a company that it does specialize in blockchain security is not able to audit our code because it's all written in Scala, right? Not everything, but you need specialized pen testers, right, that can look at Scala source code. And so I guess my question is, do you find that necessary if, as Steve Rostow was saying, the current features in the source code are bug free? Because I imagine, pen testing this kind of source code is very expensive, is what I'm really trying to drive at. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. So I agree that it would be great to have third parties. So far, the third party people that we've contracted with have quite frankly and bluntly screwed us, right? So, in particular, HackerOne took $40K worth of our money and ran away with it, right? When we said we needed to delay and wait, they couldn't just put the project on ice. They just canceled the whole contract. And so we lost $40K. It was an $80K contract. And, anyone with a reasonable business sense would understand that you just, put that project on ice and you go on with your other clients. But they didn't choose to do that. So far, all of the third-party groups that we've worked with, and HackerOne is not the only one, but all the third-party groups that we've worked with have actually not provided value and just sucked away important resources. So I'd love to have third-party engagement, but we're going to have to look really, really hard at those third parties, because so far the high-profile ones that have a name for themselves have turned out to be rotten. And I don't use that language lightly. I use it quite deliberately.
So here's an observation for you about that. So I'm not a lover of testing, right? And I'll acknowledge that. I'm much more a Dijkstra sort of character than I am anyone that pushes testing, because testing only shows the presence of bugs. It doesn't show the absence. And that's that famous Dijkstra quote. However, when you look at testing and what it's about, it's really an experiment to determine whether the behavior of something that you're playing with meets what you expect, right? And so when you look at that in the light of who has most to lose and who has most to win, actually our membership have most to lose and our membership have most to win. If you think about testing as a service where you offer out testing in some sense, our membership that's where to go to get this thing tested. They'll be better than any external party because they have a vested interest. So any member, from Jim Whitescarver to whoever, Gary, those members, if we can structure something that gets the membership testing, that would be a really good thing to do.
I agree 100%. And we tried a bounty program, and again, people sort of abuse the bounty program pretty badly. If there's a way to engage the membership that isn't a bounty program, then and I think that you're suggesting a framework for that.
It's just a framework. So when you think about us going to the membership and saying, hey guys, we're up the creek without a paddle, and unless we find some money quickly, we're going under, right? So that was said some time ago now, and the membership, bloody hell, wow, they surprised us, right? And they came through. Well, it's a lot easier for them to come through if they're developers by spending a bit of time doing some testing. What's tricky is how would we structure it? Rather than saying, members, will you come and test? I think what we need to do is say what it is we want them to do from a testing perspective and see if they come.
Well, yeah, but part of so I share with you some of your feelings about testing, but not all of them. A lot of testing, and especially the kind of testing that we want, has to do with using the platform in unexpected ways, using the platform, the way the street would use the platform. So there's that famous quote from William Gibson: "The street finds its own uses for things." Right, and we really, really hope that RChain would be used in ways that we didn't expect, and we just need there to be people who are using RChain in ways that we didn't anticipate, and find vulnerabilities this way. Right, it's. We've been pretty good about characterizing the requirements, but a lot of times when you characterize the requirements, you're just unaware of some assumption that you're making in your characterization that you haven't made explicit. And when you throw it out into the wild, people find those assumptions. They make them explicit, and then they try to break them. So that's the kind of thing that I think we want to seek from some third party, whether it's the membership or some organization that farms out hacking, whatever it is. That's the kind of thing that we really need, and the reason is because at the point where we start to have hundreds of millions or billions of transactions, there's a lot, suddenly the network has a big target on its back, right? Anybody who's interested in that money supply and wants to get at it by nefarious means, they'll go after it.
One proposal I might suggest, if you're open to some alternative approach, would actually be hosting hackathons and seeing if campuses could come co-align.
I love this idea.
That is.
I love this idea. Usually, people are motivated to participate in the hackathons because there's a prize. But yes, you're right, and I've been contemplating something very similar for the past few weeks. So I think it's fortuitous that you mention it. If anyone wants to help us organize those hackathons and reach out to various campuses around the world, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would love to, from what I could from Illinois. We actually have this center called Decentralized Systems Lab, where community of developers doing what? Building decentralized systems. Now, how well they would be at picking through Scholar code, I'm not entirely sure. But if they are hardened cryptographers, there's a chance.
Yeah, sure. And it's not just about cryptography, right? I mean, you can do all kinds of exploits with buffer overflows, or thread pool overflows, or just there are all kinds of things where you can you can cause the system to get into unexpected states that don't involve cryptography.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm driving at. I'm driving at pen testing specifically, and that's a certain class of individual. So I think we can take this thread offline, but thank you for addressing it, Greg. Because
No, I appreciate you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah.
Hey guys, while we're talking about testing, can I put a plug in?
Please, please.
All right. So a couple of weeks ago on this call, Arvin had demonstrated his the wallet that he was building, and he's made like amazing progress. And next Tuesday, so you'll see on the RChain calendar every Tuesday at 7 a.m. we have an RChain wallet development meeting. So next Tuesday, we're actually going to be taking Arvin's wallet out for a spin. So please join us. We're going to be working on testnet. We're all going to create our own wallets using his MyChain wallet application. And then we're going to start sending test revs back and forth to each other and taking his wallet for a stress test. Anybody wants to look at that wallet ahead of time, it's myRChainWallet.com. And again, we'll be meeting next Tuesday, the 24th. Oh, I guess it's the 24th.
Awesome. Christmas Eve.
Yeah, Christmas Eve, although it's nice and early. So,
it's so funny. I was thinking, it's like we want to rattle my chain. So it's definitely the Scrooge story.
So please join us and check the Discord channel for updates. So thank you.
Awesome.
And Frank, I will follow up with you to see what we can do at UIUC, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, at the Decentralized Systems Lab. If there is some way we can engage with them to on the testing side. And just for context, I wanted to let people know that that particular group that Frank is talking about has put out some Casper-related bug research also. So it would be a good group to engage with.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I also want to sort of amplify some of Ned's comments. One of the best quality assurance activities you can do is to develop applications on top of the platform, right? Because like using Steve's analysis of who stands the most to gain, who stands the most to lose. When your app depends upon the platform, you're in both categories. And so you have a vested interest in making sure that the platform behaves as you hope it would. So the more dApps we can get on the platform, the more they act as a kind of quality assurance measure. And they also help rein in the requirements. When you have a general purpose programming language like Rolang, there's so many different application domains you can consider going after. And almost all of them require some kind of optimization with respect to that particular domain. So the requirements are endless. But once you have a few dApps that sort of define an ecosystem, a sort of reasonable expectations on the platform, that helps kind of limit the requirements. Hopefully people understand what I'm saying. Okay, so have we sort of covered this topic?
Yeah, I think we beat it to death. Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yep, think so.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to mention that yesterday I was up at 3:30 a.m. Pacific time doing a dry run with the Chinese community on an AMA interview, AMA, and then we did the AMA at 6 a.m. Pacific time, and that went swimmingly well. There was a lot of support for RChain during the interview and from the community. So I want to thank all those involved, especially our new VP of Chinese Relations, Lori Luo, and the folks, Charlie, whose name I don't recall right now, but who was the translator, and Eric Meng was there, our board member, and all those involved made it a highly successful event. So I'm really grateful about that. I will be headed back to China in the probably the second week of January to solidify some relationships there. And I'm trying to think what else we have. There's a bunch of other updates, but I have to hold those for the closed door sessions. So I'm trying to think what else can we want to talk about in this public forum. One really nice thing that happened, as some people may know, Mike and I were working on a presentation of the combinator version of the row calculus. We submitted a version about a year and a half ago, and that got rejected, and rightfully so, because the reviewer found a bug. And it was an easily fixed bug. The reviewer didn't see the fix, but as soon as he spotted it, I realized, oh yeah, I had swapped something around. So I fixed that. We resubmitted it to a couple of different venues. But this time, the feedback from the reviewers was completely non-substantive, and essentially amounted to censorship. So I took it upon myself to send the draft to the world's expert in this particular field, and that was about 6 months ago, and we finally got a response back, and the reviewer was highly positive about the paper and wants to work with us to get it published. So I won't talk about who the reviewer is, who this expert is just yet, until we have more concrete steps. But I do want to say that this is very positive news, both for RChain, because those technical results are quite useful for our purposes, but also because it sort of points to phenomena that happen. There's the same kind of social processes that sort of muck up lots of things, also muck up academic research, and it's just a fact. 40% of all mathematical published proofs are incorrect, and the peer review process is full of social dynamics. So it's really good to find ways, to keep at it and find ways around that noise. And I really hope that eventually we start to use blockchain technology to tighten up on some of those processes. In particular, there is no adjudication process in academic review. You can't go back and say, hang on a minute, you should have recused yourself because you have no expertise in this field, or hang on a minute, this comment you made is factually and mathematically incorrect. So there's no process for that. But in a blockchain setting, it makes sense to have a more codified process, especially when you have a smart contracting language that can describe these kinds of workflows and processes. So that was a bright spot for us. I know.
Can I ask a question, Greg?
Yes.
Is it somebody I know?
It is someone you know.
Okay, so then I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Instead, what I'll say is, a certain person that I also happen to know sent me an email. And that person does not say things like this too readily. So I'm going to quote from the email. And this was based on the reflective combinator stuff that Greg shared with a certain person. And this person does not say this easily. In fact, trying to get this person to say something like this would be like squeezing blood out of a stone. I was impressed that this was a very well-written paper. Right, so I was going to volunteer that and say much more about it, but I won't. As it happens, given this community call, I'm at a conference tomorrow. I'm talking on Friday morning to the Engineering and Science Research Council, ESGRC, in the UK, with a whole bunch of academics, including this person, whoever they may be, and my topic is why your research is so critically important. And the lens I'm putting on that is how blockchain comes to be in the first place, the move from centralization to decentralization, and therefore the importance of scale, and then everything else follows, and therefore the importance of protocols. The protocols that exist between smart contracts, the protocols that are inherent within Casper, and this is a clarion call I'm doing on Friday, to power up a whole bunch of academics who have between them won so many awards, I could not possibly list them. One of them was certainly a major ACM award, but not a Turing award. And that is my talk on Friday. And it followed very timely from the email that Greg also received from said person. So I'm just validating what Greg said. And that was a brilliant email for me to get, I can tell you. Made me smile.
Yes, indeed. It was quite a bright spot to begin the week with. And I absolutely agree with you that protocol is should and will become the focus. It's funny, in a Think Week paper that I did for Bill in 2002, I described a new programming model called protocol-oriented programming, and I think that, I expected it to happen in 10 years. It's 20 years on, but it's still pretty much inevitable. It's just that the time scale was a little stretchier than I thought it was. With that, I think we've covered all the major updates. Unless anyone has any questions or comments they'd like to cover, I think that's it. All right. So just so that people are aware, next Wednesday is Christmas Day, and so we will not be having the community call. And the Wednesday after that is New Year's Day, so we'll not be having the community call. So 2 weeks hence, or 3 weeks hence, I guess, will be the next community call. And I wish everyone happy holidays, and looking forward to seeing you all in the new year.
So, Greg, before we sign off, I think last year we usually do this yearly review. You lead it. I don't know how long it is. Usually probably 30 minutes or something like that. Do you want to do something like this maybe right before the new year, or?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. We could do that on let's see, the Tuesday is New Year's Eve, so let's not do that. How about the Monday?
Yeah. Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it in form of a Zoom meeting or just with Derek via an RCast?
No, I think having it as a Zoom meeting where other people can sort of give their perspectives as well.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Let's schedule that out. Sweet.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks to all, and looking forward to seeing you in the new year. Ciao, ciao.
Sweet.